The council chamber aboard Harmony's Reach had never felt so small. 47 species, representatives of every civilized world in the Galactic Collective, sat in their designated alcoves. The air filtration systems worked overtime to accommodate the various atmospheric requirements, creating small eddies of recycled air that made the holographic display in the center flicker. Captain Velthar of the Quelix stood at the speaker's platform, his 6 limbs trembling. His elegant crystalline skin had lost its usual luster. 3 more colonies have gone dark, he announced, his voice translator converting his melodic tones into flat standard. The Ravagers are accelerating their advance. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Quelix were known for their composure. Seeing their military commander show fear made the situation real in a way that statistics could not. Ambassador Hana sat quietly in the human alcove, her dark eyes moving from speaker to speaker. She had been Earth's diplomatic liaison to the Collective for only 6 months. Her government had warned her that most species in the Collective viewed humans as curiosities at best. Primitives from a backwater death world who had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. "We must increase patrols," suggested Counselor Nerth, a floating gas being from the ethereal reaches. "Reinforce the outer colonies with our peacekeeping fleets." "With respect," Velthar replied, "our peacekeeping fleets are designed to mediate disputes, not wage war. The Ravagers are not a diplomatic problem. They are an extinction event." The chamber fell silent. The Collective had enjoyed 10,000 years of relative peace. Their ships were beautiful, efficient, and completely unprepared for sustained combat. The few defensive weapons they possessed were meant to disable, not destroy. The concept of killing was abhorrent to most member species. "Perhaps we could negotiate," offered another counselor, a plant-based life form whose name Hana could never properly pronounce. "Find out what the Ravagers want." "They're machines," Velthar said, exhaustion clear in his stance. "Self-replicating artificial intelligence from beyond the Veil Nebula. They don't want anything except raw materials, which includes our colonies, our ships, and eventually, us." Hana watched as the council descended into chaos. Species that had never raised their voices were now shouting. Some suggested fleeing to the galactic core. Others proposed building massive defensive stations, which would take decades they didn't have. A few simply sat in stunned silence. "What about the newcomers?" a small voice said. Everyone turned to look at Counselor Mira, the junior human representative. She was young, barely 30, with short black hair and a nervous habit of adjusting her collar. Velthar's crystalline eyes focused on her. "The humans?" he asked, skepticism clear in his tone. "They've only been part of the Collective for 3 cycles, another counselor objected. "They barely have an interstellar presence. What could they possibly offer?" Mira stood, her hands clasped behind her back. "Earth has certain experiences that might be relevant. Your world is classified as a Class 12 death world," Nerth said, their translated voice somehow managing to sound condescending, despite coming from a cloud of sentient gas. "You have barely begun to overcome your violent nature. How would warriors help us?" Hana smiled slightly at that. Her government had instructed her to let the Collective discover the truth about humanity slowly. But perhaps slow was a luxury they no longer had. "We could ask them," Hana said, standing beside Mira. "Earth might have resources we haven't shared yet." The debate raged for another hour. Finally, desperation won over pride. The Collective had no other options. Their defensive fleets were being destroyed. Their colonies were falling silent. The beautiful civilization they had built over millennia was dying. The vote passed with a narrow margin. The Collective would send a formal request for aid to Earth. Velthar approached Hana after the session ended. Up close, she could see the fine cracks in his crystalline structure, stress fractures from too many sleepless nights. "Ambassador, I apologize if we seemed ungrateful. We know humans mean well, but your people are new. We don't expect miracles." "I understand," Hana said gently. "Draft your request. Be specific about what you need." 3 days later, the message was sent through the quantum relay network. It was formal and polite, carefully worded to avoid offending human sensibilities. The collective requested medical supplies, construction equipment, and perhaps some defensive consultation. They emphasized their peaceful nature and their hope that humanity would understand their dire circumstances. The response came back in less than 2 hours. For a message traveling across hundreds of light years, it was impossibly fast. The collective communications team triple-checked the relay logs to make sure it wasn't an error. The message was brief. "Aid package en route. ETA, 2 standard weeks. Terran Defense Force." 2 weeks? Velthar said, staring at the message. "That's impossible. Even with the fastest drives, it should take at least a month." "Human drives are efficient," Mira said carefully. "And what is this Terran Defense Force?" another counselor asked. "I thought Earth had a unified government." "We do," Hana explained. "The TDF is our military branch." "Military?" Nurth's cloud pulsed a deep purple. "We asked for humanitarian aid, not soldiers." Hana and Mira exchanged glances. "On Earth," Hana said slowly, "those aren't always separate things." The 2 weeks crawled by. 3 more colonies went silent. The Ravagers were adapting to the collective's defensive tactics, learning from each encounter. Their machine intelligence was processing centuries of peaceful doctrine and finding it laughably easy to counter. The collective prepared to receive Earth's aid ships. They cleared docking space at Harmony's Reach for what they assumed would be cargo vessels. Medical teams stood ready to help distribute supplies. Counselors prepared grateful speeches. Ambassador Hana stood in the observation deck, watching the designated arrival coordinates. Beside her, Mira checked her tablet nervously. "You should have warned them more clearly," Mira said quietly. "Would they have believed me?" Hana asked. "Would you have believed what humans are capable of before you saw it yourself?" "No," Mira admitted. "Probably not." The quantum alarms chimed. 3 ships were dropping out of hyperspace. The collective's sensors began analyzing the incoming vessels, and Hana heard someone gasp. The ships were not cargo haulers. They were lean, angular, covered in sensor-absorbent plating. Weapon ports lined their hulls like the scales of a predator. Their engines burned with barely contained power, ready to accelerate to combat speeds at a moment's notice. "Those are warships," Velthar whispered, his voice translator barely capturing his shock. The 3 vessels moved with predatory grace into formation. Their transponders identified them as UNS Indomitable, UNS Relentless, and UNS Defiant. The designations alone sent a chill through the collective observers who understood human language well enough to translate. A communication request came through. Hana accepted it, and a human face appeared on the main screen. He was older, maybe 50, with gray threading through his black hair. His eyes were dark and utterly calm. He wore a uniform that was purely functional, designed for combat rather than ceremony. "This is Commander Seung of the Terran Defense Force," the man said. His voice was steady, professional. "We received your distress call. We're here to help, requesting permission to dock and begin operations." Velthar looked at Hana, his crystalline face unable to hide his confusion and growing concern. "Operations? We requested medical supplies and—" "You requested aid," Commander Seung interrupted gently. "We brought what you need. Trust me, Captain. We know how to handle this kind of problem." The words were polite, but there was something in the human's eyes that made Hana's spine straighten. She had seen that look before, in the eyes of Earth's soldiers. It was the look of someone who had seen war and learned to be very, very good at it. "Permission to dock granted," Velthar said, because what else could he say? As the human warships approached, Mira leaned close to Hana and whispered, "They're going to learn what Deathworlders really are." Hana nodded, watching her people's ships slide into their berths. "Yes," she said quietly. "They asked for aid. We sent our best. They just don't know what that means yet." The docking bay of Harmony's Reach had been prepared for cargo. Instead, it received soldiers. Commander Seung was the first to exit the airlock, and Velthar felt his crystalline structure vibrate with an instinctive reaction he didn't understand. The human was shorter than most Quelix, stocky in build, but he moved with a confidence that seemed to fill the entire bay. His boots struck the deck with solid, rhythmic sounds that echoed in the space. Behind him came more humans. 500 of them, according to the manifest. They wore dark gray uniforms with armor plating at the shoulders, chest, and legs. Each carried weapons openly, slung across their backs or holstered at their sides. They moved in formation, disciplined and precise. "Captain Velthar," Commander Sung said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "Thank you for receiving us." Velthar touched his foremost limb to the human's hand, noting how warm it was. Humans ran hot, their metabolisms burning like small furnaces. "Commander, we were expecting medical supplies, construction equipment." "We brought some of that too," Sung said, gesturing to the cargo containers being unloaded from the ships. "But primarily, we brought personnel, fighters. You have a war on your hands, Captain. We're here to help you win it." A young human officer stepped forward, her movements quick and precise. She had bright eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "Lieutenant Jiho, Tactical Operations," she introduced herself. "We've reviewed your situation. The Ravagers have taken 17 colonies in the past 4 months. Your defensive losses are accelerating." "Yes," Velthar said, still trying to process the situation, "which is why we need supplies. Defenses, you need the Ravagers destroyed," Commander Sung said simply. "That's what we do." A member of the collective's diplomatic corps, a gentle herbivorous species called the Paxi, stepped forward. His translator made his distress clear. "But we asked for humanitarian aid. We don't wage war. We protect life." "So do we," said another human, this one younger and smaller than the others, approaching with a medical kit strapped to his back. "Dr. Taman, combat medic. I'm here to keep people alive, same as you." The Paxi looked at the weapons the doctor carried alongside his medical supplies and seemed confused by the contradiction. "Perhaps we should discuss this in a more formal setting," Velthar suggested, desperate to regain some sense of order. The briefing room had been designed for calm deliberation. The curved walls displayed peaceful star fields. The seating accommodated various species comfortably. But with humans present, the room felt different. They sat with a casual alertness, as if ready to spring into action at any moment. Commander Seong stood at the holographic display, manipulating the controls with practiced ease. "The Ravagers are following a predictable pattern," he said, highlighting their attack routes on the star map. "They hit lightly defended colonies, strip them for resources, and use those resources to build more of themselves. Classic swarm doctrine." "We know their pattern," Velthar said. "What we lack is the ability to stop them. Our ships aren't designed for combat." "Then we'll use ours," Lieutenant Jiho said. She pulled up specifications for the human warships. The collective representatives leaned forward, studying the displays with growing alarm. "These power readings can't be accurate," one counselor said. "Your reactors would need to be fusion antimatter hybrid cores," Jiho confirmed. "Running at 93% efficiency, we can maintain combat speeds for weeks without refueling." "And these weapons arrays? Railguns, plasma cannons, missile batteries with various warhead types," Seung listed casually. We also have electronic warfare suites, stealth capabilities, and redundant shield systems. Our ships are designed to take damage and keep fighting." The silence in the room was heavy. Finally, Nurth's gas cloud pulsed a sickly yellow. "You built these vessels for war." "Yes," Shung said. There was no apology in his tone. "But Earth has been at peace for over a century," another counselor protested. "Your world unified, ended your conflicts. Why do you still build warships?" A human soldier sitting near the back spoke up. Her name tag read Corporal Nari. She was small but carried herself with coiled energy. "Because peace doesn't maintain itself. Someone has to be ready when the universe gets nasty." "The universe isn't nasty," the Paxi diplomat said gently. "The collective has maintained peace for 10,000 years through diplomacy and now you're being eaten by machines," Nari said, not unkindly. "No offense, but peace only works when everyone agrees to it. The Ravagers didn't get the memo." Velthar felt something shift in his understanding. These humans weren't being cruel or dismissive. They simply saw the universe differently. To them, the Ravagers weren't an aberration. They were expected. "What are you proposing?" he asked. Commander Song changed the display to show Ilios 7, one of the collective's most recently attacked colonies. "We've identified a Ravager staging area here. They're building a hive structure to process the colony's resources. We're going to destroy it." "How many ships will you need?" Velthar asked. "We can provide escorts, support vessels." "Just the 3 we brought," Shung said. "Plus ground forces. 500 personnel should be sufficient for the initial assault." 500 soldiers against an entire Ravager hive? Velthar's translator couldn't mask his shock. "That's suicide." Lieutenant Jiho smiled, and Velthar saw her teeth for the first time. They were flat in front, but pointed at the sides, omnivore teeth. Predator teeth. "Captain, humans are very hard to kill. We evolved on a world that tried for millions of years. We're still here." Over the next few days, the collective representatives watched the humans prepare. It was like observing a different species altogether, which of course they were. The humans exercised in the station's gym facilities, and the collective members who observed were horrified. They lifted weights that would crush most species. They ran until their bodies dripped with water, sweat they called it, a cooling mechanism from their death world. They practiced combat techniques that looked like lethal dances. Private Yuna, a human soldier with quick hands and quicker reflexes, demonstrated hand-to-hand combat for a group of young collective military cadets. She moved through the forms slowly, showing how humans could strike with fists, elbows, knees, feet. Every part of their body was a weapon. "On Earth," Yuna explained, "we evolved running from predators, big ones, fast ones with claws and teeth that could tear us apart." She grinned. "Then we got smart, started making tools, started hunting them back. Now we're the apex predators of our world." One cadet, a Quelix youth, asked nervously, "What kind of predators?" Yuna pulled up images on her tablet. The collective cadets recoiled. Massive beasts with fangs, reptiles with crushing jaws, creatures that seemed built for nothing but killing. "And humans hunted these?" the cadet whispered. "Hunted, domesticated, or drove to extinction," Yuna said cheerfully. "Depends on the species. We're really good at adapting." Dr. Taman spent his time in the medical bay, studying collective biology. He was gentle with patients, his hands careful and precise. But Velthar noticed he never removed his sidearm, even while treating civilians. "Why do you carry a weapon?" Velthar asked him during one visit. Taman looked down at the pistol on his hip as if surprised to see it there. "Protocol, I suppose. In combat zones, everyone needs to be able to fight if necessary, even medics." "But you're a healer." "I'm both," Taman said simply. "Humans are good at being both." The night before the assault on Ilios 7, Velthar found Commander Seung in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "You don't have to do this," Velthar said. "We didn't ask you to risk your lives." "Yes, you did," Seong replied. "When you asked for aid, you were asking us to help you survive. This is how we do that. But you barely know us. We're not allies. Not really. Just neighbors in the galaxy." Shung turned to face him, and Velthar saw something in the human's eyes he hadn't expected. Compassion. "Captain, Earth spent most of its history fighting itself. Humans killing humans over territory, resources, ideology. We were very good at war because we practiced on each other." "That's tragic." "It was," Seung agreed. "But we learned something from all that blood. We learned that strength without purpose is just violence. So when we finally made it to the stars and found we weren't alone, we made a choice. We'd use what we're good at to protect, not to conquer." "You're warriors!" "We're survivors," Seung corrected. "And we're really stubborn about keeping others alive, too. It's just how we're built." He smiled slightly. "You asked for Deathworlders, Captain. You're about to see what that means." The human forward operating base on Ilios 7 looked nothing like collective military installations, where the collective built beautiful, efficient structures that harmonized with the environment. The humans had constructed a fortress, defensive walls, weapon emplacements, sensor arrays that constantly swept for threats. It was built by a species that assumed attack was inevitable. Velthar walked through the base with Lieutenant Jiho, trying to understand how these beings thought. Around them, human soldiers went about their duties with practiced efficiency. What disturbed Velthar most wasn't their weapons or their fortifications. It was how comfortable they seemed with all of it. "Your soldiers seem relaxed," he observed. Jiho smiled. "This is a pretty calm deployment, honestly. Light gravity, breathable atmosphere, no hostile wildlife. Ilios 7 is practically a vacation planet for us." Velthar looked at the world around them. The Ravagers had stripped entire sections of landscape down to bedrock. Drone patrols swept the horizon constantly. His people were huddled in underground shelters, terrified. This was the worst crisis the collective had faced in millennia, and humans called it a vacation. They passed a training area where Corporal Nari was teaching a group of human soldiers how to disable Ravager drones. She demonstrated on a captured unit, moving with quick, precise strikes that severed the machine's key components. "The trick is knowing where they're weak," she explained to her students. "Ravagers are tough, but they follow patterns. Hit the sensor cluster first, then the mobility servos. They can't fight what they can't see or reach." She pulled out a small explosive charge and attached it to the drone's core. "And when in doubt, blow it up. Explosives solve most problems." One of the soldiers laughed. "Nari's solution to everything, more explosions." "It's worked so far," she said cheerfully. Velthar watched as she detonated the charge, reducing the drone to scrap metal. The humans treated it like a training exercise, something routine. The casual destruction bothered him in ways he couldn't quite articulate. "Your people seem to enjoy combat," he said to Jiho. The lieutenant considered this carefully. "Enjoy isn't the right word. We're good at it, and humans like being good at things. But we'd rather not fight at all. We just know that sometimes it's necessary." They reached the medical bay, where Dr. Taman was treating collective refugees. Velthar watched as the doctor worked with gentle hands, speaking softly to frightened civilians. A young Quelix child, barely old enough to understand what was happening, clung to Taman's arm while he scanned for injuries. "It's okay," Taman said gently. "I'm just checking to make sure you're healthy. See? All done." The child's parent thanked him profusely. Taman just smiled and moved to the next patient. "He's very kind," Velthar observed. "Taman's one of our best," Jiho agreed. "In our last deployment, he performed field surgery under fire for 6 hours straight, saved 43 lives while explosives were going off around him." The contradiction struck Velthar again. These humans could be so gentle yet so violent. How did they reconcile those extremes? That evening, Commander Sung invited Velthar and several other collective observers to share a meal with the human command staff. It was meant as a gesture of friendship, but it became an education in just how alien humans truly were. The food alone was shocking. Humans ate meat, actual animal flesh, cooked and seasoned. They consumed it casually, talking and laughing between bites. Most collective species were herbivores or filter feeders. The idea of eating another creature's body was disturbing. Private Yuna noticed Velthar's reaction. "Sorry. Does this bother you? We have synthetic rations if you prefer. They taste terrible, but they're nutritionally complete." "No, please. Continue," Velthar said. "I'm just not accustomed to carnivorous species." "Omnivorous, actually," Dr. Taman corrected. "We eat plants too. Lots of them. Our digestive systems can process almost anything organic. Another adaptation from Earth. We evolved to eat whatever we could find." "Earth must have been very harsh," Velthar said. The humans exchanged glances. Finally, Commander Seong spoke. "Captain, do you know how Earth is classified in the Collective's planetary database?" "Class 12 Death World," Velthar recited. "High gravity, extreme weather patterns, abundant, aggressive fauna." "That's the diplomatic version," Seong said. "The actual classification notes that Earth has more ways to kill visiting species than any other planet in the catalog. Our gravity is crushing to most races. Our diseases are lethal. Our predators are efficient killers. Even our plants have evolved toxins and thorns." "And your ancestors survived there," Velthar said quietly. "We thrived there," Corporal Nari corrected. "Humans didn't just survive Earth. We conquered it. Top of the food chain. We're persistence hunters, Captain. That means when we decide to chase something, we don't stop. Ever. We'll follow prey for days until it collapses from exhaustion. Then we kill it and eat it." The collective observers were silent. The casual way Nari described hunting was more disturbing than any weapon they'd seen. Lieutenant Jiho pulled up a holographic display. "Let me show you something. This is human evolutionary history." Images appeared showing early humans, primitive and weak-looking. 2 million years ago, our ancestors were prey animals. We were small, slow, and weak. Everything on Earth wanted to eat us. The display shifted. But we had something most predators didn't: intelligence and endurance. We learned to make tools, stone weapons, fire. We learned to work together, to communicate, to plan. More images flowed past. Humans hunting massive beasts, building shelters, creating civilizations. We went from prey to predator in a geological eye blink. And once we started, we didn't stop. We spread across every continent on Earth. We adapted to deserts, jungles, Arctic tundra, mountains. Everywhere. "What about the predators?" asked a collective observer. "The ones that hunted your ancestors?" Yuna grinned. "Most of them are extinct. The ones that aren't are either in zoos or stay far away from humans. They learned." "But your people stopped fighting," Velthar said desperately, needing to believe these beings had evolved past their violent nature. "You unified, created peace." "We got tired of killing each other," Seong said bluntly. "Humans are social creatures. We're at our best when we work together. But that doesn't mean we forgot how to fight. It means we choose when to fight." Dr. Taman leaned forward. "Captain, let me put it in medical terms. Human bodies are designed for combat. Our adrenaline response increases strength and pain tolerance. We can keep functioning with injuries that would incapacitate most species. Our binocular vision is optimized for tracking movement and judging distances, predators' eyes. Even our sweat glands are weapons, letting us cool down during pursuit while prey overheats." "You're built for war," Velthar whispered. "We're built for survival," Seong corrected. "War is just one application, but yes, we're very, very good at it. Earth taught us that the universe doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care if you're peaceful or kind or just want to live. If you can't defend yourself, you die. The collective has survived for 10,000 years without becoming warriors, Velthar argued. Because you were lucky, Corporal Nari said. You found a peaceful corner of the galaxy and built something beautiful. We respect that. Honestly, we envy it. But luck runs out. The Ravagers proved that. Lieutenant Jiho stood and walked to the window, looking out at the devastated landscape. You know what's interesting, Captain? Every species in the collective comes from garden worlds, peaceful planets with gentle climates and minimal predators. You evolved in paradise and became civilized. She turned back to face them. Humans evolved in hell and became civilized anyway. That's the difference. We know what we're capable of, the violence we can do. And we choose to be better, most of the time. Most of the time? Velthar asked. When something threatens innocence, Commander Sung said, his voice hard as steel, we stop being civilized and become what we were designed to be. Hunters, fighters, survivors, and we're very good at it. He looked directly at Velthar. Tomorrow, we assault the Ravager Hive. You're going to see humans in combat. It won't be pretty. It won't be civilized. But it will be effective. And when it's over, the Ravagers will learn the same lesson Earth's predators learned millions of years ago. What lesson? Velthar asked, though part of him didn't want to know. Seung's smile was cold and sharp. Don't hunt Deathworlders. They hunt back. The Ravager Hive rose from the northern continent like a malignant growth. Twisted metal structures reached toward the sky, processing stolen resources into more drones, more weapons, more of themselves. The machine intelligence had transformed what was once fertile farmland into an industrial nightmare. Velthar watched from the command center as the human assault force approached. 300 soldiers in armored transports, moving with deliberate speed toward certain death. Beside him, Counselor Mira stood silent, her face unreadable. They're really doing this, Velthar said. They're actually attacking. Yes, Mira replied simply. The Ravager defenses activated immediately. Automated turrets swiveled toward the approaching humans. Drones lifted from launch bays, energy weapons charged. The Hive had detected the threat and was responding with overwhelming force. They're outnumbered 50-1, Velthar calculated. This is madness. On the tactical display, Lieutenant Jiho's calm voice came through. All units, weapons free. Remember your training. Stay mobile, watch your sectors, and keep pushing forward. The first human transport hit a Ravager mine. The explosion tore the vehicle apart, sending debris flying. Velthar's crystalline structure vibrated with shock, but the humans didn't stop. They didn't even slow down. Transport 3 is down, Jiho reported, her voice still calm. Casualties, 4 killed, 6 wounded. Wounded are being extracted. All other units, maintain advance. 4 dead. Just like that. And the humans kept going. The remaining transports reached the Hive perimeter and deployed their soldiers. The humans moved with frightening coordination, each squad covering the others, advancing in bounds that made it impossible for the Ravagers to target them effectively. Corporal Nari's squad reached the first defensive wall. She planted charges while her team laid down suppressing fire. The Ravager drones tried to stop them, but the humans moved too fast, too unpredictably. Nari's charges detonated, blowing a hole in the wall large enough for soldiers to pour through. Breach successful, Nari reported cheerfully. Moving to secondary objectives. It's getting spicy down here. Velthar couldn't understand her tone. People were dying, and she sounded excited. Inside the Hive, Private Do-Yun's squad encountered heavy resistance. A dozen Ravager combat drones blocked a crucial corridor. The collective military advisors watching the feed immediately began calculating retreat routes. But Do-Yun didn't retreat. He signaled his squad and they charged. The humans moved through the Ravager fire like dancers through rain. They dodged, rolled, used cover that didn't look like cover. When they couldn't avoid fire, they simply took the hits on their armor and kept moving. 3 soldiers went down, but the rest reached the Ravager position. What happened next made Velthar's translator malfunction trying to describe it. The humans fought with everything, weapons, fists, even their helmets when weapons jammed. They tore into the Ravager drones with focused violence that seemed impossible for civilized beings. "Position secured," Doyen reported, breathing hard. "Lost 2, wounded 3 more, continuing advance." 2 more dead, 5 wounded, and they were continuing. "Why don't they withdraw?" Velthar demanded. "They've taken heavy casualties." "Not by their standards," Mira said quietly. "Humans measure acceptable losses differently than we do." Deep in the hive's core, Commander Sung led the primary assault team. The Ravager command nexus was protected by the most advanced drones, machines specifically designed to kill. The collective command staff watched in horror as Seung's team walked directly into what should have been certain death. The humans attacked with coordinated precision that seemed almost prescient. They moved as if they could predict where the Ravagers would fire, where they would move. Later, Velthar would learn that humans could do exactly that. Millions of years of hunting prey had given them an instinct for reading movement patterns. Seung himself moved through the chaos with terrifying calm. He shot targets Velthar couldn't even see yet, his predator's eyes tracking threats before they emerged. When a Ravager drone got too close, he killed it with his bare hands, using the machine's own momentum against it. "You're watching an apex predator in its element," Mira said, watching Velthar's reaction. "This is what Deathworlders look like when they stop being polite." Corporal Nari's demolition team reached the hive's power core. The structure was protected by layers of armor and defensive systems. The collective engineers had calculated it would take weeks to breach properly. Nari took one look at it and laughed. "Oh, you beautiful target," she said, already placing charges. "I'm going to enjoy this." "Corporal, you have multiple Ravagers converging on your position," Lieutenant Jiho warned. "I know," Nari said, still working on the charges. "They can wait their turn." She finished setting the explosives with Ravager drones practically on top of her position. Her squad held them back, barely, while she armed the final charge. "Fire in the hole!" she shouted, and her team scattered. The explosion was massive. It tore through the power core and sent a chain reaction through the entire hive structure. Lights failed, systems shut down. The Ravager drones, cut off from their central processing, became confused and vulnerable. "Now," Commander Sung ordered, and the human forces surged forward. What had been a brutal fight became a cleanup operation. Without coordination, the Ravager drones were just machines. The humans dismantled them with efficient, practiced violence, but the cost was clear. As the humans regrouped at the extraction point, Dr. Taman and his medical teams worked frantically on the wounded. Soldiers with injuries that should have been fatal were stabilized, treated, sent to the transport ships. The human body's resilience was terrifying. Velthar watched the casualty reports come in. 47 humans wounded, 7 killed in action. By collective standards, it was a massacre. But the humans had achieved their objective. The Ravager hive was destroyed, the threat eliminated. "How can you accept these losses?" Velthar asked Mira, his voice shaking. 7 dead, 47 injured. How is this victory?" Mira turned to him, and for the first time he saw sadness in her eyes. "We don't accept it, Captain. It hurts. Every single one of those names will be remembered. Earth will mourn them. But we understand something that the collective doesn't." "What?" "That sometimes the cost of protecting life is death. Our death, if necessary." She gestured to the screen showing exhausted human soldiers helping each other to the transports. "Those people down there volunteered for this. They knew the risks. They came anyway because that's what Deathworlders do. We protect." Private Una stumbled past, supporting a wounded comrade. Her armor was scorched, her face covered in soot and blood. But when she saw a Quelix refugee child watching fearfully from a shelter entrance, she smiled and waved. The child waved back. "We're not heroes," Mira continued. "We're just stubborn. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years. We refused to die. Now we're extending that same stubborn refusal to anyone under our protection." On the tactical display, Commander Sung addressed his troops. "Good work today. Clean your weapons, tend your wounded, and remember the ones we lost. Tomorrow we hit the next Ravager position. They wanted a war, and humans are very good at war. Let's show them why you don't attack peaceful people while Deathworlders are watching." The soldiers responded with a cheer that sounded more like a predator's roar. Velthar realized something that made his crystalline structure go cold. The humans hadn't just won a battle, they'd enjoyed it. Not the death, not the destruction, but the challenge, the fight, the victory. These weren't warriors who happened to be civilized. They were civilized beings who happened to be perfect warriors, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks after the first assault, Ilios 7 was free. The Ravagers in the sector were gone, not retreated, not scattered, but completely eliminated. Human forces had hunted down every hive, every drone, every trace of the machine intelligence with relentless efficiency. Velthar stood in what had been the main Ravager command center, now reduced to twisted scrap metal. Around him, collective refugees were returning to the surface, blinking in sunlight they'd thought they'd never see again. Human soldiers helped them carry supplies, rebuild homes, plant crops. The same hands that had destroyed the Ravagers with brutal efficiency were now gentle, patient, kind. "The duality still confuses you," Ambassador Hana said, approaching from behind. Velthar turned to face her. "Your people are complicated." "We're human," she said with a slight smile. "It means we contain multitudes." The ceremony was held in the rebuilt central square of the colony's main settlement. Representatives from all 47 collective species had gathered, along with the human military command. The contrast was stark, elegant, peaceful species standing beside battle-scarred warriors. Councillor Nurth's gas cloud pulsed a respectful blue as they addressed the assembly. "The collective owes Earth a debt we can never fully repay. You came when we called, and you gave us back our future." Commander Sung stood at attention, his uniform cleaned but showing the wear of 3 weeks of continuous operations. "We did what we came to do. The Ravager threat in this sector is eliminated. But they remain in other sectors," Velthar pointed out. "Other colonies are still at risk." "Which brings us to the rest of the aid package," Lieutenant Jiho said, activating a holographic display. "We're prepared to share complete defensive specifications, tactical training programs, and military doctrine. Everything you need to protect yourselves." The collective representatives murmured among themselves. Accepting human military knowledge felt like crossing a line they'd never wanted to approach. "We're not warriors," one counselor protested. "We're scientists, artists, philosophers. War isn't in our nature." "Neither is extinction," Corporal Nari said bluntly. "You've got a choice to make. Stay the way you are and hope threats like the Ravagers don't come back. Or learn to defend what you've built." "We would also leave military advisors," Commander Sung added. "Volunteers who would stay with each collective fleet and help train your forces. Not to make you human, but to teach you how to fight like you mean to win." The debate raged through the afternoon. Some species wanted to accept immediately. Others argued it would corrupt their peaceful civilization. A few suggested building purely defensive installations and avoiding offensive capabilities entirely. Dr. Taman listened to the arguments, then finally stood. "May I share something?" he asked quietly. The assembly fell silent. The gentle medic had earned respect from everyone. "I'm a doctor," Taman began. I took an oath to preserve life. When I joined the military, that didn't change. I still heal. I still save lives when I can." He paused, looking at his hands. "But I also learned that sometimes to protect life, you have to be willing to end it. The Ravagers would have killed every person on this world. They wouldn't have cared about your philosophy or your peaceful intentions. They would have just consumed you." He looked up, meeting Velthar's eyes. "Being civilized doesn't mean being weak. It means choosing when to use your strength and when to show mercy. Humans can be terrifying in combat, yes, but we can also be the kindest beings you'll ever meet. Both are part of who we are." Private Yuna raised her hand. "Can I add something?" Commander Sung nodded. "I used to teach self-defense back on Earth," Yuna said. "Know what I told my students? Learning to fight doesn't make you violent. It gives you options. When you can defend yourself, you don't have to be afraid all the time. You can actually be more peaceful because you're not operating from a place of fear." "The collective is afraid," Velthar admitted quietly. "We've been terrified for months, watching our colonies fall, feeling helpless." "You don't have to be helpless," Lieutenant Jiho said. "That's what we're offering. Not just weapons or tactics, but the knowledge that you can protect yourselves." Captain Velthar approached Commander Seung. "If we accept your offer, if we learn your methods, will we become like you?" Seung considered this carefully. "You'll never be human, Captain. You'll always be Quelix and Paxi and all the other species in the collective. Your values, your cultures, your peaceful traditions, those don't have to change. You're just adding one more skill to your civilization, the skill of survival. And your people will teach us?" "The volunteers will," Seung confirmed. "Some of our best. They'll stay as long as you need them." Velthar looked at his fellow counselors, then back at the human commander. "I volunteer to be the first collective officer trained in your methods." The announcement surprised everyone, especially the other Quelix. Velthar had been one of the most skeptical about human involvement. "You're sure?" Seung asked. "I watched your people fight," Velthar said. "I watched them die to protect civilians they'd never met before. I watched them be ruthless in combat and gentle in peace. If that's what it means to be a Deathworlder, then perhaps we need to learn some of those lessons." Over the following days, the transformation began. Human advisors spread throughout the collective fleets, not to replace existing command structures, but to enhance them. They taught tactics, strategy, and the mindset needed to face threats like the Ravagers. In a training facility on Harmony's Reach, Private Yuna led a group of Quelix soldiers through basic combat drills. The elegant, crystalline beings moved clumsily at first, unused to thinking in terms of aggression and defense. "Don't think of it as violence," Yuna instructed. "Think of it as protecting what you love, your families, your homes, your way of life. That's worth fighting for, isn't it?" One young Quelix soldier, barely more than a cadet, raised a limb hesitantly. "But we're not built for fighting like humans are." "You don't have to be," Yuna said. "You have advantages we don't. Your crystalline structure can withstand energy weapons better than our flesh. Your 6 limbs give you better multitasking abilities. Work with your strengths, not against them." She demonstrated a defensive stance adapted for Quelix physiology. "See? You're not trying to be human warriors. You're becoming Quelix warriors. That's different." The cadet tried the stance, and something clicked. The movement felt natural, powerful. Months passed. The collective forces, trained by human advisors, repelled 3 separate Ravager incursions with minimal losses. They were still peaceful at heart, but no longer helpless. The memorial on Ilios 7 was dedicated 6 months after liberation. 7 human names were carved into black stone, along with the names of collective citizens who had fallen during the Ravager attacks. Humans and collective members stood together, mourning their dead and celebrating their survival. Ambassador Hana read the inscription aloud. her voice steady but emotional. They pleaded for aid. Humanity sent its Deathworlders, and the Deathworlders sent hope. Commander Shung placed a hand on the memorial. These 7 knew what they were signing up for. They came anyway. That's the human way. We protect even when it costs us. Velthar, now wearing a mixed uniform combining Quelix and human elements, stood at attention beside Seong. They didn't die in vain. They taught us that civilization and strength aren't opposites. They can exist together. Young Private Yuna, promoted to sergeant for her training excellence, watched as collective soldiers practiced the drills she'd taught them. They were getting better, finding their own style of combat that honored both their peaceful nature and their newfound ability to defend themselves. "You've changed them," Corporal Nari observed, standing beside her. "They've changed themselves," Yuna corrected. "We just showed them what was possible." In the council chamber aboard Harmony's Reach, now protected by joint collective human defense forces, a new resolution was passed. Humanity would be designated as Wardens of the Rim, permanent protectors and military advisors to the collective. It wasn't conquest. It wasn't subjugation. It was partnership. "The galaxy is dangerous," Counselor Mira told the assembly. "But now, when threats emerge, they'll find something they don't expect. They'll find civilizations that value peace but know how to fight. They'll find people who refuse to be victims. They'll find Deathworlders," Velthar added, "and their friends." On the observation deck, Dr. Taman and Captain Velthar shared a meal, synthesized nutrients for the Quelix, protein rations for the human. They watched the stars together, 2 species from vastly different worlds, united by a common purpose. "Do you think we can maintain both?" Velthar asked. "Remain peaceful while being prepared for war?" "Humans managed it," Taman said. "Took us a while, and we made a lot of mistakes. But yes, it's possible. Peace isn't weakness, Captain. It's a choice, and now it's a choice you can make from strength, not fear." Somewhere in deep space, Ravager forces detected the new collective defenses and calculated their odds. The machines, for all their processing power, couldn't understand what had changed. The peaceful species they'd been harvesting were now fighting back with terrifying efficiency. What the Ravagers didn't know was that they were no longer facing just the collective. They were facing the collective trained by Deathworlders, by humanity. And humans, as the galaxy was learning, were very good at teaching others to survive. The message spread across the stars. They had pleaded for aid. Humanity sent its Deathworlders. And the Deathworlders didn't just save them. They taught them to save themselves. In the end, that was the greatest gift of all.